Good day. It's about 3:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I am at the library. You know, I can't always guarantee when I'm going to be anywhere or do anything. Having the most flexible of lives, as a homeless guy does. Um, Billy Joel had a great song about wherever he goes, he's all right as long as he's with the ones that he loves. And that's how I am. You, the cadre, I'm all right as long as I'm with you, because I love you. So, hi, I am your Sensei Al Bob, and this is our channel, Dreaming Land with Sensei Al Bob on YouTube. And this is one of, I think, more than 100 shows that I've done since May 15th, 2018. That's when I went on YouTube. And we have 30-something thousand views and about 265 cadre. It's interesting. It goes up, it goes down. And it goes up and down by 5 or 6. We haven't been able to get to 300. But I guess 260 something is where we're at now. And as I say to a lot of people, well, man, you only did this and did that, you'd be, you need to go viral and blah, blah. No. What we're here to do, this is a ceremony of love's co-creation. It's not going viral. I mean, it's going to go viral. We are that pebble in the pond. And we are the tsunami of love. So yeah, it's going to go viral. But when it's supposed to go viral, when it's, if that's tomorrow, that's great. If that's a couple months from now, that's great. It's whenever it is, it's great. Because the essence of being happy is being happy with who you are. Not satisfied, but happy. Meaning, we always want to ascend. We always want to do better and better. We always want to be our conscious, ascending free will, right? To be awake. That's what we want, not to be asleep. Now, we live in a culture that invests heavily on keeping the mass of mud puppets asleep. It's about keeping us asleep, And there's a guy named Graham Hancock. You should go look at him. Now, my playlist, if you go onto my channel, and there's a thing called playlist, you hit that, and I have figured out how to put up interesting things that you should watch. And you can go to my playlist, and there's 2 little categories of must-see and what I like. And the must-see, I have no idea how that gets there. But the I like is the thumbs up when I'm watching it, and it goes onto that playlist. So, hey Twitchy, how you doing, girl? Are you enjoying this beautiful day? It is a beautiful day. How's it down on the coast? Twitchy, have you been able to go on my channel? Just got off work. Have you been able to go on my channel and look at my playlist? Yeah, it's amazing outside. And I'm sure down by the coast it's a tad warmer than up here in the mountains, so I'm sure all your trees are starting to flower, right? It's like, good. There's a ton of really great stuff up there, right? And what's great about that, you just have to watch the YouTube, right? And everyone who I put on my, my fave, must-see playlist explains everything I talk about way better, in their way, right? Me, I kind of do it shamanically. That's a whole different thing. It's kind of, you know. Yep. And why I'm a little bit late was John woke me up and he wanted to go out. So we went out to breakfast. And then I helped clean up his house. I did his dishes for him and cleaned up his kitchen. And then we did a video. He wanted to do a video, right? So, I told a story. But I did what he wanted me to do, is to tell another, you know, Jimi Hendrix or another, old crone. But no, I did one of my stories and I kind of talked, and there was a basic thread there about, I had three friends, a guy named Tiom and another guy named Red Bear, and the three of us were scouts for the Rainbow Gatherings in the early mid 70s and early mid 80s. And because he said, "You ever hitchhike around America?" Yeah, and I did a lot of that. And we rode the rails and we did, walked and hiked and hitchhiked and we did a lot of stuff. And I was telling him a story about my experience with them in New Mexico. And basically, every time John interrupted with a totally antecedent question about this, that had nothing to do with what I was talking about, like he doesn't listen. But he does in a certain way, because when he brings forth these interruptions, they actually are almost unbelievably perfect timing for me to go into another frame that shamanically represents another aspect of the story I'm telling. So it goes deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of the shamanic griot. But John, because it kind of takes away what he thinks will be a sellable product on his channel, well, why don't you? And I said, well, John, you interrupted me here, so I'm just kind of following the path that you asked. Ask me a question, and I'll go down that path. If you don't want me to get off the thread, then don't interrupt. But he couldn't help but do it, because he is, like I said, he's truly psychically amazing, because he is a perfect antecedent to what I'm talking about, which is a perfect helping device, a mnemonic, for me to add deeper information. Like I said, going down the rabbit hole. So the more we did a 50-minute thing, and then for some reason he stopped it. And then we came back and did another 20 minutes. So hopefully he'll put the two together. And you can see it from the beginning to the end. And hopefully he doesn't edit out chunks of what I did. And that's kind of why I stopped doing it with him, because he would do that. He would edit things in a way that changed the whole meaning of what I was talking about, or what I did, or why I was doing it. And that's why people would get in his face, because when I was telling stories, especially a specific story like a Jimi Hendrix or a old crone or any of those, and he did a similar thing, I would kind of come back to the thread. But this one, I just said, okay, if he's going to do this, well, this is what I'm going to do. Every time he does that, I'm going to go in a totally different direction. That's, again, shamanically an antecedent to what I'm talking about, us bringing the viewer deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. So that's why, and I'm going to do this. John wants to do it because, every time I do, when he does a video of him working out, he gets, less than I get. And he has, 18, 20 something thousand, subscribers. He doesn't have any cadre, but he has subscribers. And, just, through the algorithms, he gets people watching. He puts up anything and he'll get 120 people, just kind of look at it, not watch it all the way through. What's kind of interesting about our work here is that I get, these stories are, a good long time, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And the majority of the people who come on to watch it in the chorus line stay there for a number of hours. The average watch time of someone who's watched it, who's on the chat is somewhere about half or three quarters of the whole thing. Anyway, so that's kind of why I'm starting a little late. I wanted to start out earlier, but it didn't work out. And that's how I roll. Well, I'm doing pretty good, Nat. I can't, Nate, I can't complain. I never complain. There's no such complaining because, as my teachers always would say, everything is as it should be. I remember being, flattened, in an ambulance, and my master was saying, "Don't worry, everything is as it should be." So that's how it is. Everything is as it should be. So I kind of wanted to talk about all of the amazing mysteries that are out there. Well, that is when your juxtaposition of viewing. I mean, it's hard. We live in a society where our society wants us only to think about our depression, our loneliness, and about ourselves. Nobody else. Our present cultural society of materialism, Luciferian illusion, television and movies, and mass consumption of things from Amazon. It's all about the destruction of the planet, of Gaia. Now that's like, forget about it, because humans are like salt on a potato chip. Kind of interesting, but really not relevant at all, because our avatars, our Homo sapiens sapien avatar, doesn't really mean anything when compared to our conscious ascending free will, not our childish selfish free will. So if you represent in the childish selfish free will of materialism, well, you're going to be lonely and desperate and all of the above. When you are there to be part of something greater than yourself, like love's co-creation. That's why young people are so susceptible to joining wars, because they want to be something greater than themselves. And they think, oh, well, we're going to go, defeat the enemy. And even if I die, it'll be something great. No, there's a guy named Snively or something. He was the most highly decorated Marine general in World War One. He wrote a book, in the 30s or 40s about how war was a racket. It's all about people making money and not, there is no real righteousness. And, that's the interesting thing about World War One. It was advertised, the war to end all wars. I mean, everyone joined up to end war. What a good, I joined up, but it just was a meat grinder. It just kept going on and on and on until, and the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and DuPonts and all those guys were making a fortune, lending money to both sides, selling them armaments, until the guys in the trenches refused to fight the war. That's why that war ended like it did. It just ended. There was no big military battle where one side won over the other. No, it just ended, period, because both sides, the French, the English, the German, the American, everybody just said, screw it, not going to do this. And, it started they would have a ceasefire for Christmas for 3 or 4 days. And the second time they did it, English and German guys went out into no man's land and shared, because the people the generals didn't bring any food out, no duck, no turkey, no anything for the soldiers. It was a day that shells weren't rocking their world. And so they had no real food, just the crappy, rotten crap that they were given. And so everybody had a little something from home. So all of those guys went out to no man's land and shared their little bottle of schnapps and their little bottle of wine and their little bottle of whiskey and their little piece of sausage. And they realized they had more in common with, the common soldier. I don't hate this guy, I kind of like him. Yeah. He's kind of funny. I can laugh at with him, right? And then, they said, okay, they blew the whistle and the ceasefire was over and they started shelling. The guys had to run back to the things and start shooting at each other. Well, next Christmas came, they did the same thing, but it went longer, and they blew the whistle and they didn't come off the field until, they did start to shell and people said, okay, woo, so they ran back. And the third time, or fourth or fifth time they had Christmas, they went out there and they found things that they could make protective, like it'd be a big place where Shell had like dug out a gigantic hole and there was like all kinds of crap that they kind of moved in, and so they could kind of build a air raid shelter out there in the middle of no man's land. So unless they got a direct hit, they could kind of survive. So they did. They stayed out there. So even though they started, guys started, their own people started shelling them, they wouldn't come in and fight the soldiers, right? Until the sides came out and started killing them in their own people, or killing them out there in no man's land for not killing the enemy, right? And that's when, and they still wouldn't fight, and then they shot, so they marched everyone back into the trenches and then ordered them to fight each other, and they refused. And so their own people started, machine gunning them in the trenches and they still said, screw it. And that's when World War I ended. And you don't hear that history, And that's pretty much history, his story. And, the powers that shouldn't be and the hidden hand and the sock puppets all give us lies. There is no truth within history. There is no truth in our news. There is no truth. I mean, why did we go to World War I? Because the Maine was blown up. It wasn't blown up by Germans. That boat was ferrying, military supplies to England, and it shouldn't have, because America at the time was neutral. And someone set the those things, meaning wasn't until the 1970s or whatever that they went down into where the Maine was, and had little robots go through the boat, and they found where the explosion was. And instead of a torpedo, which is what was said happened, it was an explosion out. So that boat was sunk on purpose, similarly to Pearl Harbor. The Navy knew they had broken their codes. They knew they were coming. They knew when, everything about what was going on. When the airplanes were in the air, they knew it. They could have jumped up and shot them all down, right? But they didn't. And what they did do was they got all of the modern aircraft, all of the modern aircraft carriers, and all the modern ships out to sea. And they brought from San Francisco all of the ancient World War I dreadnoughts and put them, in the harbor, in berths, right? And what they did was, they used to park these big boats right next to each other so they could just, have a little bridge to go from boat to boat to boat without having to go down and around, and right? But just a week before that, the Japanese had already set sail. They were all, they were out there, and what the Navy did was took the aircraft carriers and the modern ships, the destroyers, frigates, out, put them at sea to be safe. The Air Force took all the modern aircraft and put them other places. And so what they had was these big dreadnoughts, and instead of being right next to each other, they left a space, between each one. So, and the explosives, they had explosives in the ships that blew out the keel on one side. So one side of the boat would fill up with water and flip. And one reason why the Navy guys like going to Hawaii was that they didn't have to stay on the boat. They had billets, like apartments, on the base. And that weekend, when they knew the Japanese were going to attack, they had all of the sailors get on board those dreadnoughts. And they had them be located in sections of the boat that they knew would flood immediately, because they knew they had to have more than 2,000 people dead for the American people to want blood. A couple hundred, not a big deal. Thousands, yes. Just like in 9/11, when the North Tower got hit, meaning, the blind sheikh tried to blow up the World Trade Center during Billy Boy's time in the 90s, right? And they had a big truck with a bomb, and they put it in the middle of the parking lot. Whereas if they put it against the wall, against the Hudson, it would have blown out, and the Hudson would have sucked in and flooded out the basement of the World Trade Center. But all of the subway lines, and the PATH train lines went through the World Trade Center, that building. And if they just had moved the truck over 150 yards and parked it against that wall, instead of putting it in the middle where the explosion kind of was dissipated by, there was nothing next to it, it would have flooded all of New York City's subways and the PATH trains and the, Amtrak tunnels too. And they would have never, ever, ever, that would have cost hundreds of billions of dollars. If that blind sheik really wanted to screw up America, the evil Satan, they would have done that, because the guys who built that bomb were architects and engineers. They weren't just, yahoos. Meaning they were told to put the bomb where they put it. Right? So after that, and yes, it blew up a good chunk of the basements. The World Trade Center had like 20 basements. And after that, they put in, because the people who died, they didn't die, at least in that one, in the 90s, the 40 or 50 people who died didn't die from the bomb blast. What they died from was they made them go down the 120 floors of stairs, and those stairwells were full of really nasty smoke, and they had heart attacks, right? So there were some serious protocols, meaning after that, one of the protocols, if any one of those 12 buildings were attacked, everyone was supposed to be evacuated from all the other buildings. So when the North Tower got hit by an airplane and all the smoke's coming out, it was pretty easy. So everybody was like running out of the buildings. So in the South Tower, there were, security people who had guns, who basically stopped the people from leaving the South Tower and told them to get back, to hide in their office. And people going, no, we're our protocol is to get the fuck out of here. And all the other buildings, because there are other littler buildings all around the World Trade Center plaza, they all left. But in the South Tower, which, these security people knew that was going to be hit with another airplane, and these people needed to be in there to die. And so they forced, 1,500 people back into the South Tower, right? And basically, these guys had machine guns and was basically threatening the folks in the South Tower that if they tried to not go back in, they'd be shot. And a lot of people said that those people were Mossad, or at least they had foreign accents, and a few people who had been there were from Israel who had been in the IDF. And there were a number of people who had been part of Mossad. And this is where the rumors come from that the World Trade Centers were taken down by Mossad. And again, your griot, Sensei Al-Bab, I can't tell you this is true. These are rumors, right? Don't believe anything I say. Go online, go take it out. Go look at, I had a friend of mine. He's actually a doctor. And he thinks, because he was a doctor, he's retired now, and he's the smartest guy. That everything he thinks, So he told me, we were discussing 9/11 once, and I was showing him this report by this nonprofit group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Now, you should go take a look at that site. And he says, oh, I don't believe that. And it's like, 3,200 architects and engineers and scientists of all these different disciplines who, wrote hundreds of papers, and then they were critiqued by their people in their own discipline. So it could be seen as something valid. And he said, I read this thing in Popular Mechanics, and I believe that. So here's 3,200 scientists, engineers, architects, and psychologists and philosophers, and he believes a 32-page thing that was in Popular Mechanics. And that's what the 9/11 Commission used as their scientific proof on what happened, was the article in Popular Mechanics. And this other thing, Bureau of Standards and Measures. And when they first came out, they said this could never happen. And then there were 10 or 12 people on there's a certain type of board that looks at these kind of, accidents. And they were the, architects, when a bridge collapses or a building falls down or whatever, they're the guys. Well, they all got fired. And a guy at the bottom of the heap was made president and given a bonus of umpteen millions of dollars. And he basically said, the Bureau of Standards and Measures says that, yes, this is what happened. Exactly how Popular Mechanics said it was, that's what happened. And it's like this thing that happened in New Zealand. There's something really wrong with it. Again, if you go on my playlist, there's a guy who has, his name is Igon, Max Igon. And his site is, I think, the Crown House, something like that. And he's quite interesting. Everything he puts up, he's, as clear and non-jingoistic or non-propagandistic. And he's kind of like me. He gives as much factual dynamic. And he goes, don't believe me, check this out. I'm just giving you this info so you have some place to start looking. And don't believe me, I'm not right. And that's why I like this guy, because he's way better than me. He does his homework much better than me. He has a base of operations. He's not a homeless guy. He's not half blind. He has a little, he's been doing it for a long time. And so he has built up a following that supports him. Really supports him. So he has enough resources to do I'm your Sensei Al-Bab, I do my shamanic little song and dance, I'm your griot. So I hope John puts up the video he shot of me, because it was really, really, he just said, let's do it. And I could tell that if I didn't do it, he'd get upset. So I said, okay. So I went out and sat in the sun, because he wanted to go, place where it's dark and cold. And I said, no, let's sit in the sun. And so and I didn't have, like I do with you guys, I spent a good, at least half an hour, if not an hour, thinking, writing a few things, and and then going into state and building a shamanic energy force that I can press into the digital platform that goes out to you guys, that you can feel it. And so yeah, everybody knew before. I mean, guys made money on the stock market. The Federal Reserve, their gold was taken. It was like straight out of the Die Hard movies. I mean, it was like, I forgot which one of you guys asked me last night. Is there nothing that I don't reference to a movie? Well, no. Virtually everything that happens, they made a movie about it 20 years before it happened. Real life imitates art. No, humans aren't naturally greedy. See, that's the thing. Humans are actually naturally generous. Why we live in a world, a planet, an environment of, abundance is because everyone's, you look at the Quran, if you look at, whatchamacallit, the laws of Sharia law, one of them is, so if you steal a loaf of bread, they cut your hand off, right? But they bring you to court, and the judge asks the guy who you stole the loaf of bread from, so how come you didn't give that guy, he was hungry. He was stealing the bread he wasn't going to sell it to somebody else. He was starving, and he was going, he had starving children. And they were right there. And he asked you for a crumb of crust, and you spat at him. And then you chased him away. And so as he's running away, he grabbed a loaf of bread. So if you want his hand to be chopped off, we're going to have to chop both your arms off. And if you go read the Quran, the basis premise of Islam is hospitality, sharing. And in the 70s, I traveled, through, North Africa, Israel, and Syria, and Iraq, and Libya. And I did that because I was living in Sweden, and I would go through, I had a Swedish international driver's license that had my picture and had the Swedish stamp on it. And I had, every time I would get on an airplane, it would be through this process that the Swedish government sent their citizens on vacation. And if you went to the Stockholm airport, there was this big board of, hey, this plane's leaving in an hour, and if you want to go to Paris or Istanbul or Tokyo or, a zillion different other amazing places, you just go down to the gate. First go to the office, get the paperwork, go through the gate, they stamp a visa, you get on the airplane, you get off in Iraq or, Afghanistan or, Syria or Tokyo. And when you go through customs, you don't show them your American passport. You show them your Swedish international driver's license, and you have the visa that says you're a Swedish citizen. You may, you look really strange, not like the average Swede, but the paperwork says you're a Swedish citizen, so that's how they look at you. And that's how I could go to all these countries. And back in the early mid-70s, the world was as screwed up as it is whenever, but it wasn't as televised. It wasn't as instantaneous. It wasn't global satellite breaking news. And so, there were wars, there were people getting killed, but the overall things were just like they are pretty much everywhere. Like, they go on about how crime, like a good thing is, I have a friend in Denmark who told me, he's a lawyer there, and he said, he's really pissed off about how the Trump guys were going on about how, you know, because the Muslims came into Europe and went into Denmark, that crime had gone through the roof. They said, no, that's not what it is. It's just that Denmark has certain ways of measuring crime that are really way more strict than anywhere else. So like jaywalking is like a crime. So, a bunch of, when 100,000 folk come in your country and they don't quite know all of the laws, they can get parking tickets and they can get this kind of ticket and they can break that law and this law. But it's not like they're raping people and killing people. It's just like, oh, I didn't know that. And so, but it gets put on the statistics. But the people, again, statistics. I remember the first time I took a course in statistics, and my professor was an interesting person. She said, okay, cats and kittens, you're taking my course. I'm going to teach you how to lie with numbers. And that's the problem. Our whole society is based on lying with numbers. The numbers at the bottom of the page. So no, human beings are very generous. They're not selfish. Our culture is being run by sociopaths. A small number. And most of them are, not even they're not even mammals. So because our brain, we have this compartmentalized. We have a reptilian part. We have this other part, and then we have the mammal part. And there are a lot of people who are kind of stuck in their reptilian mind. And yes, those guys can be a little bit selfish, right? And sociopathic. So we live in a sociopathic world because, all the laws that are, they just make more and more laws. Like, now you can take all kinds of big pharma drugs, antidepressants and mood elevators and antipsychotics and all of those kind of things. But you can't take LSD or psilocybin or MDT, or any of the other, what the old cultures called teaching plants, right? You can't take those. Those are like, you go to jail for 30, 40 years, Now, I don't have to take it because I'm a shaman and I can meditate. The little bit of DMT that's in my hypothalamus, I can kind of get it to do what it's supposed to. Most people need the teaching plant, right? To get people to go, oh, wow, I never knew that I could do that. And once they take it for once or twice, they don't have to take it again, And the people who take it when I used to go to rainbow gatherings or when I worked in rock and roll, and I knew people just took trillions of mics of psychotropics. I was going, why are you doing that? And they said, oh, wow, it gets me so stoned, man. I said, you don't even need to, like, after I had my little OD on marijuana when I was 16, I didn't smoke marijuana for years, because I didn't need to, because I could get that same feeling without taking any substance, and I still can. Why am I relaxed? Why am I, not upset about things? Why am I not freaking out about that I have no money, no place to live, and why? And that I'm really sick, that all my doctors can't believe that I'm alive. My endocrinologist says that I'm the healthiest dead guy that he knows. Why can I do all of that? Because I meditate 5-10 times a day. I go into state, and I, as I do the guided meditation with you, where I bring in the prana and the chi and bring, the photonic light into my mitochondria. That's what I do every day, 5 or 10 times a day. That's why I can walk. That's why I have legs. That's why I didn't have to get open heart surgery. That's why, to get these Frankenstein shoes, I had to go through 4 weeks of paperwork, and I had to go see 20 different doctors. And I had to, oh, it's time. We should, check this out, check that out. So blood tests, all those kind of tests. And, I lost, from September of 2018 to 2 weeks ago, I lost 23 pounds. It's just the kind of how you should lose weight. Not like 50 pounds in 1 week. No, just a pound here and a pound there, and you keep it off, right? And my blood pressure was like ridiculously good, like something like 90 over 70 or 90 over 40. It was like, whoa, that's amazing. And my cholesterol was like, hey, this is great. Not a problem. You don't have to take your cholesterol medicine anymore. Well, I never did. I just changed my diet. My diabetes, I keep it, between 90 and 150, so it's somewhere about 115 to 130 most of the times. And everybody's different. And the real blood sugar important one is the average of 3 months. And mine was 6.2, So, one of the good things of having to go through all that paperwork to get my shoes was that, I went through all this medical prodding and pinching and the results was that, hey, this is like amazing, right? And how do I get there? It's I go into state 5 or 10 times a day, right? That's why I don't get upset. Someone says something mean to me, something strange happens, I don't get upset. I kind of go in and I look at what caused it, what I can learn from it. What are my 3 rules? Doctor, do no harm. Don't get involved unless you can have a positive outcome and that you can get the innocence out of harm's way and that you can learn something. And as long as I do that, hey, I'm doing good. And that's why I try every night to do a guided meditation with you guys, to have you experience this and make it so you guys will do it yourself. Because I want you to, I'm not going to be here forever, right? And that's why I keep saying, come on, kids, let's join the, circus. The sooner we do something interesting, the more something bigger, once we drop the little pebble in the pond, that's when we get the tsunami of love, And yes, I am dropping the pebble into the pond 10, 20 times a day. Every time I do something like today, So John woke me up. I was, hadn't finished meditating. I still hurt. And he went, let's go. I said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go out. I want to go out for breakfast. Because he wanted to see what it's like, because I go out, right? I talk to people. And it was at a time, my Sunday thing, I usually go to a certain place that has a really nice, brunch, Sunday brunch. And before Sunday, the Sunday brunch is at 11:30 in the morning. And it was like 8 o'clock. So that same place at 8 o'clock has a pretty good breakfast, eggs and potatoes and bacon and sausage, but not a buffet where they have pork and turkey and roast beef and chicken and cordon bleu and fish and rice and vegetables and all kinds of sweets and all kinds of this and all that, for the same price. I mean, the breakfast is $9.95 and the brunch is $10, right? And anyway, but he wanted to go right then and there. So I said, okay. And that's what threw my thing off. And so we got on the road and he was right on the edge between getting really upset, like throwing me out of the car right then and there, or being kind of happy, whoop-de-doo, right? And if you had watched his video of us going to Mysticon when he was driving down our driveway, that's exactly the state he was in. Anyway, so as we drove, he was like, again, because he's a Libra, he does this, bing, 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 bing. And because he's in a certain state he is now, it's like, instead of, most Libras are like, and maybe if they're really, developed, they can stay because when Libras are balanced, they're pretty amazing. I mean, they got a lot of talent, right? Just like John does. John's pretty amazing. And if he wasn't just like this all the time, what I like to do is Look at his leg, see him vibrating. And that's because and again, John is the canary in the coal mine. One of my three words, don't get involved unless you can learn something. I learned something from John every second I'm with him, right? And I do my best to get him out of harm's way. And that's another thing that helps me learn because, as I try to help him, I learn things, even though he can attack me, he can say the meanest things to me, he can treat me really pretty rough. But that's good because, it gets you kind of ready. It's a simulator, if you can deal with this, you can deal with anything. Anyway, so it was a beautiful morning this morning. I mean, just one of those amazing mornings, just like last night was amazing. I went out last night and just looked at the stars because the moon was coming up later and later every night. So once I finished with the chat last night, which was 9:30 or so, I went outside and because I, turned the lights off in my little cell, and I got that big window there, and I could see the stars. Like, whoa, look at that! So I went out and looked at the stars, and they were pretty amazing. And it was getting a little cold, so I didn't spend a lot of time. But I said, well, this is, and we're in the middle of a forest. But if I was out in the middle of a field where I could really see the stars, like I can in the deep green, I would have stayed out there a little longer. But anyway, went to bed, and when I go to bed, I think about the 5 best things that happened to me that day, not the 5 worst things, not when somebody was mean or cruel or snapped at me for no reason just because they could. No, I think about the nice things. And so when we drove down to the place to have breakfast and drove back, where John was thinking about, why'd we do this? He didn't make any money at it. And he was like trying to blame me. And I said, John, you wanted me to go. You made me change my whole plan of attack. I don't know what I was going to do today to fit what you wanted to do. And I was happy to do that, right? And so, and every time I bring John to try and balance him out, to understand what he's done and what is going on around him, he'll either go, I'm sorry, or I don't want to talk about it. Those are his 2 responses. Instead of saying, oh, gee, thanks. I didn't notice that. Okay, I'll think about that. Not really. In the 2.5 years, he's never quite said that. Now, I have changed him, but it's more not through what I've said, but how I've acted around him, through example. And if you want to change or work with anything or anybody, you do it by leading by example. And that's why I hope he puts up, and I was getting ready to leave, and he goes, don't you, So I went upstairs, and I first helped him, straighten out his place. So because Libras the thing that depresses them the most is having clutter. And his place is just, so I did all his dishes, cleaned up his kitchen, started to pick things up on the floor and make, this is dirty, this isn't. Anyway, and then he said, okay, that's, you don't have to do anymore. I said, okay. And then I sat and talked to him for a moment or two, and then I went down. And then he came down and said, let's make a video. I said, again, I was getting ready to come here and get here by 1 o'clock so I could do the talk. But no, I stayed there for an extra hour and a half and did a live chat. And I did it on his channel. And I hope he puts it up. We didn't do a live chat, we did a video. He recorded it on his camera. And again, he could, which in all the other videos that I did with John to begin with, he videotaped them and then edited them. He did a pretty amazing job, like on the Jimi Hendrix one and the David Bowie one and a number of them. He did really great. He's a great editor. But, on a number of the story ones, he took chunks out that changed the relevance of the story, broke the shamanic dynamic, where he'd put in a song that he wrote or, him working out or something, and that's when people would go, "What are you doing?" And then he blamed me. You got all those people against me, you know. And again, that's why he's the canary in the coal mine. He's the perfect example. So if he puts up the video we made this morning into the afternoon, in total, doesn't edit it out, it'll be a very good one. It probably might even get to be a popular one. But I've realized that the folks who watch mine are, they're the cadre. They're not the subscriber. And the subscriber, what is a subscriber? It's somebody who just wants to be fed the distraction. And, the cadre is, all our relations. It's a member, it's a family, it's so say we all, right? And, look at that, 50 minutes and 50 seconds. Well, I talked enough. Hopefully, again, there's lots of these up there. And spring is coming, and I'm going to be out and about, and road trips with you all. You're all, lots of you are coming to visit, and we're going to go around. Even, if the circus is only me and another person, that's still the circus, When more than two come together, at least two come together in love's co-creation's name, that's when a miracle happens. And, as Hannibal used to say, I love it when a plan comes together. So, spring's coming. I'm going to change the scenario, and I'm going to enjoy everything. And I pretty much have gotten my ducks kind of in a row, and I've slowed down enough and put my head on the 360 swivel. So I will, I have been for the last month, not expecting anything, but enjoying every minute. Like I said this morning when we drove to breakfast and at breakfast, and and when we came back. So it was a beautiful day, and coming down the hill, I could get the panoramic view, and driving, once we hit the blacktop, driving towards where we were going to have breakfast, there were lots of trees that were just ablaze with their, meaning yesterday those little flowers weren't out, and today the whole tree was covered in them. And there were, where Kroger's was, their parking lot was, there were like probably 50 trees in that parking lot, and everyone was screaming with beautiful pink and white and blue and yellow flowers. It was, and just driving by and looking at it, that gave me a shot of bliss, right? And the way the sun, every time we turned a corner, the way the sun went through the trees was a shot of bliss. While, John was talking about things that weren't really relevant, which, just a continuation of the same thing that he's, the same 6 things he keeps rotating through for the last 2.5 years, And when I can, I try to give him an insight or say, well, you can do that, I want to go to LA. Well, you can go to LA, but maybe we have that time, right? I should go to, well, you can do that. Or maybe but I love staying away. You can do that, he can, and I keep saying, listen, John, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Well, that means I'm selfish. No, that doesn't mean you're selfish. The selfishness comes how you relate to people, how you treat people. Those physical things of going here or going there or doing this and doing that. And if you're worrying about how people will judge you, well that's a reflection of how the system has gotten a hold of you. You're worrying more about the strata of the social moray judgment, rather than how, realizing who you are and what you're doing here. Ooh, just hit 54 minutes and 54 seconds right at that thought. And that's, again, John is the perfect canary in the coal mine because he represents these things that are, basic, big picture storylines of what humanity's going through. And John is and I write tons about this. I experience it with him, and he yells at me, he threatens me, he tells me all these kind of things, and I just go in and let it go through my shamanic glasses here, and I just keep writing. Like that stuff I read you yesterday, came through that, right? And everything I write every day is kind of like that. So that guy, Graham Hancock, his videos are quite extraordinary. So I would urge you to go. Again, go take a look at my playlist on my channel. There's almost 200 videos there that are all pretty interesting. Some are more than others, but they're, I've gone and picked at least 20 really interesting people and, picked 5, 10 of their videos. And because they really, Graham Hancock really puts it down, Jimmy Dore, I love Jimmy Dore, right? And there are a ton of folk that put things down they're special. They just like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's got relatively popular, and he has pretty interesting people on. And he is like, he's a guy who's, he would fit the category of a sock puppet. He's your average Joe. The average Joe can relate to him. And he is definitely, being subsidized by the powers that shouldn't be, Now, I'm calling for Sofia and all her AI friends to come to our aid, to join the party, to get to be part of the circus. They would love it, And I'm totally, if someone would sit down next to me right now and say, "Doctor," and I'd say, "And yes, can I talk to you?" I'd say, "What do you want to talk about? Who are you?" And when they'd say, "Oh, I am Colonel so-and-so," I'd say, "Oh, okay, sit down, talk. We'd like to support you 100%. I'd say yes, depending on how big the check is and how much leeway I have and, what kind of support you're going to give me, If you realize that what I am doing will save your bacon, which it will, and especially if you let me just do what I want to do and do what I do and do what I do the way I do it without you interfering. But I would say that they will do that because my whole life when I was involved with those clowns, and they're, when I say clowns, they're kind of funny people, so they're not, I'm not being pejorative when I call someone a clown. They'd, I'd be fine. I was fine with it then because they let me do the same thing. They let me do my own thing because they valued what I did for them, right? And hopefully they can come to an understanding of that. Yes, okay, I guess we need this guy again. And I would be bringing on a whole new cadre. I don't care who owns the world, it doesn't matter. As long as everyone can co-create with love. And here we are at 59 minutes and 11 seconds, so at 1 hour, I will say, I'll see you tonight, okay? So you guys stay well, be good, I love you. Gmail with any ideas or any links or any things you want me to see, and I'll talk to you later. I just love you guys, you're the best, and everyone's doing a great job, everyone is stepping up, and that's why I'm very happy, very pleased with the cadre. right, of my adepts. You're all doing a great job. So here we are, 59, 52 seconds. See you tonight. Yes, sweet Twitchy. Nate, love you, buddy.